Surprise. Most marriages, what? In August? Okay.
You're live.
Okay, hi folks, and welcome back. If you just, we're coming back on here on the air, and we are not really on the air on 1480, but we are on, is it Utah Valley Live, Kent? Singlemarriage.utahvalleylive.com is where you can actually watch, and we want you to watch because there's all kinds of stuff that we want to talk about, and we need your input because Dr. Gilchrist and I are here, and we want your input as to what you think about things. And so anyhow, okay, so first of all, we want to, it's a brand new programming. And so yesterday we had a panel of a couple of BYU co-eds, and it was hosted by Giles and Monet, and so they had some students on there, and it was really interesting because a lot of them had the Kent, real quick before I forget, have Sophia bring me the I'm sorry, what I need is the power cord because I'm losing power. We can have one of the assistants, the production assistants, hustle and bringing me some power, please. Okay, so let me see. I am, and I got to get on the right website here because I think I am on. I'm on the old website. Okay, so let me put this in. Okay, so anyhow, but the purpose of the show is to talk about people who are about to get married, and we want to know.
I was just about to say, don't do it.
Don't do it. I can't get on to this.
I'm kidding. Really, I'm kidding.
I know, we're kidding. So, you know what though, Ken? Before I tell Sophia, I need that power code, Soph, the power cord. It's single to get online. Do I just go to Utah Valley?
Utah Valley, and of course, UtahValleyLive.com. Follow the link.
Okay, here we go. Okay, I am sorry. Here we go. Anyhow, so this is pretty easy because here we go. Single marriage, let's chat. Okay. I need some power cord, and thank you so much. Here we are. Well, bring me this over here, sweetheart, please.
And here comes the power cord.
Come on, this is we're live and it's awesome. Here we go.
Turn around and smile at the camera.
Smile at the camera. This
is starting to look like my house.
So anyhow, okay, got some power. And we're on singlemarriage.utahvalleylive.com. Again, singlemarriage.utahvalleylive.com is where you can join in the chat, and we want you to because someone's saying, what's up? Okay. So any of you out there that have some questions, this show is primarily for you because you're young. I wouldn't say naive, but young. And
yeah,
I would say naive.
Okay, I would say naive. Okay, you would say naive, Dr. Gilchrist. Why?
Yeah.
Because it's true.
Yeah. Young people, especially, depends what age you're talking about.
I know. Okay, now let's take this age group.
I just read this statistic that says Salt Lake County has older brides than Utah County, and that doesn't surprise me.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Moving from Canada, where people either don't get married or
they just live together, right?
Yeah, and they get married like after living together for 17 years. They get married when they're 40.
What do you think about that? Do you think that's weird?
I think it's weird that they expect to have a marriage celebration and everyone gives them gifts and things and showers as if if
it's brand new.
They've been married, they've been living together for 20 years and they have 5 kids and then they get married and they want like a wedding and the whole deal.
Why do people get married then?
That's what I think is weird.
Just for
the honest truth, I think that the women have always wanted to get married and the men don't, and the women just go along with it and the man finally caves or. Something happens. Something
happens to where she twists it. Yeah,
but she pretends the whole. I mean, I know this from family experience. She pretends the whole time that not my family, but from my wife's family. Mm-hmm. The women pretend the whole time that they have no problem with living together. There's no reason to get married.
But they do. Women do.
But as soon as it's like let's get married, it's like holy cow, we're having a wedding. We're having the whole they want to get married.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So what's young? Are we talking about Utah County young or Salt Lake County young?
Yeah, really. What's young? Let's talk about Utah County young because this is it's Utah County, and I'm not too sure what people expect out of marriage. When these kids are getting engaged at 18 and 19, what do you think about that?
What they want out of marriage is
they
want to live happily ever after, like in the movies, and
is that real? Yes and no.
It's not real if you do it when you're 18. The statistics are very highly stacked against your success in a marriage.
What about 19 and 20? Better?
I don't know. The statistic I know is if you marry your high school sweetheart. And,
is what?
And it's somewhere around 95%
that you'll end
up in divorce.
Wow, interesting.
Now that's an older statistic that I've heard, longer ago.
And I'm not too sure people even marry their high school sweethearts anymore, because it's more like group dating around here and stuff like that. I don't think people even.
Well, I think 17-year-old girls must be marrying a guy that they met in high school, or and I think
the cheerleader and the football captain or something to that effect.
One of the features of young marriage here is that you have younger girls who either are marrying their high school sweetheart or who are marrying a returned missionary, and they only have to know the guy for a couple of months because he's a returned missionary. Like, number one on my list of things is RM.
Let's talk about that. What do you think about that? Do you think that because do mission presidents actually tell? I know they used to tell them in the past, go home and get married. Are they still doing that?
From what I hear, some do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that wise counsel? I know it's really specific. I know it's hard. It's because.
Well, my straight up experience and advice would be that a young man changes a lot between 18 and 21, and then changes almost as much between 21 and 25.
Right.
And so I think a young man is just starting to be ready to think about seriously being a husband at around 25. Now, it's ballparking, 24, 25, 26, somewhere in that area. But so say ballpark 25. And I think the same thing is true about young women. Big changes between 17, 18, and 21. And then 21 to 23, women tend to grow up a little quicker, and I think a young woman around 23 is ready to start
thinking about
it. Yeah.
And I was old. I was almost 28.
Yeah. So
I was an old maid.
Now maybe I'm just autobiographically saying that I'm the perfect statistic, because I was 25 and my wife was 23.
Oh, okay.
But I know that we were just barely ready to really be married and start.
Right. That's a good age.
And if I had married anybody younger than that, I was still
pull your hair out.
Yeah, it would have been a disaster.
A disaster.
And I've seen all kinds of people get married younger than that, and it's a disaster. And it's because they don't have realistic expectations.
Young. Yeah, and I think it's the expectations.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
So you ask what do people want when they want to get married?
Yeah,
young
the
like
expectations.
That? And sometimes it's they want to get out of their house, and getting married is not the first way you should get out of your house.
Yeah, definitely.
So, in other words, I think before you get married, you should live on your own somewhere.
Yeah, I wish I would have. I mean, I did and I didn't. I still stayed at home part-time when I went back home, but I was old, like I say, old lady.
Well, I think that, well, that's not true,
but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it is good. Go out and live on your own.
Yeah, a marriage has to have the two people in a marriage have to bring something to the marriage, and if all the young girl is bringing to the marriage is, I'm getting married because I want to live on my own and get out of my house, and like I have wants, I want, and what are you offering? Well.
Here's some questions here. Okay, so what about those people?
I don't know how blunt I can be, but
no, you can be blunt. Be as blunt as you want. Here's a question here.
Well, a 17-year-old girl doesn't have a lot to offer a 21 or 22 or 23-year-old young man other than sex.
Right, that's true. And people do, and I think this is the case, and I'm going to say it on the air, here, is that I think a lot of kids are, especially within the Mormon culture, they get married for the sex. Because
otherwise they're in trouble. Yeah.
And you're in trouble if you don't. So what about those people who get married? Here's in the chat room here, at 18 and are still married at 50 years later. What did they do right?
Okay, well, so for one thing, if we're talking about that, you're talking about somebody who did this 50 years ago, and times were different.
So true.
And people stuck together, and just held on for dear life.
They grew up together in many ways.
Yeah,
like their children growing up together.
Yeah, and marriage was a thing. Divorce wasn't as easy to get. So and women couldn't leave as easily. So if you're talking about somebody who got married 50 years ago, for the first 25 years of that marriage, they really probably couldn't leave.
Right.
And by the time you've got 25 years into your marriage, you've probably worked out enough of the kinks that you can
That you can hang on. Yeah,
you know?
you hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but amazingly enough, nowadays there are people who are like in their 80s, have been married for 60 years, and they're getting divorced, and you wonder, well,
Yes, it's
why?
we talked
You know?
about that. The great divorcees, the divorcees,
Yeah.
that are. It's a new phenomenon,
Yeah.
and it's taken a bulk of the new statistics for the newly
And
divorced.
so I think that's has to do with the change of the times. So people who are older now that made a young marriage work, it's because that's the way things were, and the times have changed, and so those statistics will change, and you actually have older people getting divorced, and what looked like successful marriage may not be.
Right.
You know?
They just hung it in there for the children or for whatever.
And then there's there's a tradition that some people that most people grew up with, was that you just don't get divorced. It's just not an option.
Yeah.
So especially women, you have a lot of women who, from those generations, who just hang on and grit their teeth and bear it, and they take a lot of crap, and
Emotional beating. I mean, the list goes on for women.
Yeah.
Huh?
But young women nowadays don't understand that, like, women. It's only in the 70s that women could
Women's
start to
lib
have
kind
their
of thing?
they could have their own credit. Like, women couldn't have credit cards. They couldn't have credit. Everything was in their husband's name. Like, it wasn't feasible to live on your own. Unless you were on welfare or something, you know, in Canada anyways, and I know the same thing is true in the United States. You had to do your banking through your husband, and you had to do credit and everything through a husband. So you couldn't buy a house, you couldn't have credit, you couldn't go buy a car on credit.
Yeah.
None of those things were available to women.
Girls don't understand that right now.
That's only in the last 40 years, right?
Here's another question, Dr. Gilchrist. How does the youth-oriented media like Twilight movies affect kids' expectations of love and marriage? Are there any negative or positive effects to that? You know, just this movie fairy tale kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of that. A lot of we get our ideas from movies.
I think there's well, it's again it's this notion of romantic love, and I think you've got a lot of potential here for a lot of adultery down the road.
In which way?
Well, a lot of these movies have young women marrying a guy, but they really love another guy, or they're torn, or there are
there's conflict within the heart.
Yeah, there's lots of movies or stories about bisexuality. So there's a recipe for a lot more. What used to be a midlife crisis, there's a recipe to have that, not midlife, but like after you're married for 3 or 4 years.
Okay,
you know?
your midlife's coming a little early.
As soon as real life hits, as soon as the honeymoon is over, then people start looking around for the other guy or the other girl, because that's what we see in the movies, right? And
or maybe there's something lacking that you didn't realize, and you jumped into the marriage too soon. And this is what this program is about. How can you prevent these types of things? So here's another question: do you think most people that get married today at 18 are doomed to fail? The stats aren't really in your favor, are they?
Yeah, no, they're not. And
but then again, there's the LDS crowd, non-LDS crowd as well.
Yeah. But the LDS statistics are getting closer and closer to the national.
To the national.
So we're
we're already there.
We're not as different, yeah.
But we're different in the sense that we do get married a little bit younger, I think.
I mean, yeah, that's true. So
going back to what you were saying,
statistics can't tell you the whole story.
Right.
It's an averaging, right? So it's not saying because you get married at 18, you're definitely going to get divorced. What it's saying is that most people do, but there's some people that don't. So you might fall into the category of the some that don't. But is that just sheer luck, or is there something different about you or your husband, or about what you did before you got married? Why is the difference between those who succeed? What is the difference between those who succeed and those who don't? But generally speaking, the problem is that the guy you marry at 18 you're going to be a different person when you're 21, and a different person again when you're 23 or 24, and the guy is going to be a different person when he's 21 and when he's 25, and by the time you hit 30, you're both going to be very different people than you were when you were 18.
And if you don't move together, you're moving apart.
Yeah, and what you find is that a lot of guys don't grow up. they keep hanging around with their buddies and playing ball, and they want their nights out, and they go on their hunting trips, and they're, you know, and you end up not being part of their social
world,
life,
yeah.
which when you're 18, you're their whole social life. But when you're 30, you're not part of their social life. You're home with the kids, and you're
Right.
sitting there going, "Why am I stuck here with these kids?"
Right, and
he's off
becoming
fishing.
resentful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's off fishing, or he's out playing baseball 3 nights a week, and depends what town you live in. Spanish Fork, it's softball, and I don't know what it is in Provo. Maybe it's soccer, or,
Right.
but or football. But you have a lot of men that don't grow up. They just always stay boys, and unless someone teaches them, unless someone works with them and helps them to grow up, unless you grow up together, you know.
Right, and I think that's what happens with these some of these younger ones that make it work. They grew up together. So I get another question from the chat room: is why does age matter, and what's the ideal age to get married? And another one is the numbers say that in Utah County the average are women that are married are 20 and the men are 22.
Yeah. So why does age matter? When we make laws that have to do with young offenders, we don't respect those laws if the crime is serious. That's something that bugs me. But if the crime is serious, we don't respect those laws, and we try them as adults. But the reason that we even have the notion of a young offender is that your brain is not fully developed, and so you're not morally fully capable of moral and ethical reasoning. And I believe that the brain is fully developed at 21, generally. I think that's the average.
At least becoming aware.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
So
I know what you're saying, though.
So you're not really an adult until you're about 21, and you're not really making decisions as an adult. So why does age matter? Because when you're 18, you're thinking as an 18-year-old.
You're fresh out of high school.
And it's not just a lack of experience. It's that your brain is not developed enough to give you a proper judgment to go along with your desires. Your body and your mind go together to balance your desires and appetites with what's morally right or good and what will be good in the long run. If I follow every one of my desires, I'm going to be dead tomorrow. Because I have desires that would kill me. You know?
Right, yeah.
And that were killing me until I changed.
Right.
Until I grew up.
Right, until you grew up and you understood it.
And I would say I started to grow up at 25, and I was 34 when I actually grew up.
Yeah, I know. It's for me too. I was a lot older.
When I actually stopped
I'm still growing up.
When I actually stopped following my desires and allowed my brain to govern myself, I was 34 years old.
Wow,
So
yeah.
if I'm getting married at 18, I'm pretty much following my desires, and I'm not thinking about it. It's, gee, I love you, I want you, and nothing else really matters. And your parents try to talk to you, and you're like, you don't understand. And
yeah, and that conversation goes on a lot, doesn't it?
Every
You know what I'm saying?
18-year-old thinks they're the only person that's ever been in love, and it's
Right.
just, and it's totally following your desires. And
Is it puppy love for these kids? Would you say?
well,
You know what I mean by puppy love?
yeah,
Just
no,
infatuation.
I don't think it's quite that. It's not quite like a crush when you're 13 or 14
yeah,
or 15.
infatuation kind of thing.
No, I don't think it's quite that, but it's still, you're not, an 18-year-old is thinking about getting married because they want to be with that person 24 hours a day. Girls especially want to be with the guy 24/7. And you're not going to be with the guy 24/7.
Yeah,
you're
he's
gonna
gotta
need
work,
jobs.
you gotta- yeah.
There's going to be, and that guy is going to have his friends and buddies, and they're going to come over and you're going to
Play
have
video
him and
games.
his buddies 24/7, or he's going to be gone somewhere else, and you're going to stop being the center of his social life.
Right.
He's dating you and making you the center of his social life to win you over. Once he's won you over, you're not going to be the center of his social life.
Yeah, you take a
anymore.
back burner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't forget that, ladies.
You become one of many friends, and it takes time for a guy, to drop those other friends one by one until it's just you.
What makes a man want to do that with a woman? Well, does that even come?
Yeah,
Does that come with maturity? Because guys, I find guys as they get older,
want to do that. They're not wired that.
they're not
way.
wired. They want to stay with their buddies.
Yeah.
Okay, but as they get older, if they become more in love with their spouse,
Yeah.
and they grow together,
Yeah.
pretty soon the men go away.
Yeah.
They don't want to be there. They want to be with that other.
If you grow up and if that happens, and if that happens, it's because your spouse becomes your best friend.
Right. You need best friends in this, don't you?
Yeah. And so you find that the guys you're hanging around with are just stupid and they haven't grown up, and your wife has is smarter, or your wife is more fun to be with, or
more conversation with her, or lots of things. But at 18, I'm not too sure if that's really happening yet.
No, it's like you're introducing a new friend into a group of friends. You don't just suddenly drop all your other friends and you're all over the new friend.
Right.
Now you are if it's a girl, because it's a girl and you want to win her over. But once you've won her over, she's part of your circle of friends.
Right.
And you still have that circle.
Right. Right.
And again, you don't care. And you deny that because your brain isn't operating fully. You're saying, "Well, I'll change him," or "I'm so wonderful that he's not going to want to be with those guys. Once we get married, he's not going to hang around with those guys anymore."
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Once we get married, don't say that.
Yeah.
Don't say once we get married, this is going to change, or that's going to remain the same. Once you get married, hopefully you have enough of a foundation, whatever age you are or whatever age you choose to get married in, that there is a foundation there that you will realize and be aware that you cannot say once we get married, thus.
Yeah. We don't have the we don't have the
crystal ball.
That's right, but we don't have that. That's for sure.
Yes.
But what I was thinking of is the moral ability. If you're Latter-day Saint, you can't fully test drive the car. Right?
Okay, yes, you cannot have sex before marriage.
So you can't live together and try it out and all that, right?
And I was just talking to somebody recently.
But in a sense, you still need to test drive the car.
So how do you do it?
You date, and you date in different situations, and you date with other people around and different people around. You do things. You have the person come over and do things with your family. You see how they interact with your family.
Right.
You see how how they interact with your kid brother, who's a jerk and a pest. You know. That's going to show you what he's going to be like as a dad, you know, to a kid who's a pest. You see how he acts around your parents. That's going to tell you whether or not you're going to be able to spend Christmases with your family, or if it's always going to be over at his place and you're going to have to do whatever he wants. Because if he sits in a corner and looks at your parents like they're from outer space, and he just wants to, let's get out of here, let's get out of here, let's get out of here. I can't stand this, you know.
Yeah, what kind of a social life are you going to have?
Well, that's what you're going to be like with your family. He's going to be like, no, we're spending Christmas with my family. No, we're spending Thanksgiving with my family.
Right.
You know? But if you see that he gets along with your folks and is happy and cheerful, and like you have to put them in all these different situations.
Right. See,
that
will be telling.
That would simulate what it might be like to be married.
Right. Because after the honeymoon, it's all things change, and you get back to real life. Yeah. Okay, here's a couple of other questions. Actually, I have quite a few questions. So, if how long should you date your fiance before getting engaged? How long should you date?
20 years.
20 years. I think continue dating. Mike, so just continue dating and romancing.
I was kidding, but you're right in that one sense. Yeah, as long as it takes to find out what you need to find out. So all of these things that
But if you have a red flag, out of there, shouldn't you be? Something that gives you something you're not comfortable with.
If you see a temper, if you see violence of any kind, if you see disrespect towards you, if you see disrespect towards children, if you see disrespect towards older people, if you see disrespect towards, if you see any kind of racism or prejudice,
rudeness, anything that's just not.
There's all kinds of red flags.
Yeah, red flags.
I was going to say what you want to do is you want to test drive the car in every way other than sex. And what people do most of the times nowadays is they have sex to test drive the car. And
that's the reverse.
And that's the only thing that doesn't work to tell you how things should go. All these other things that you do with your potential spouse will help you see what they're like, how they make decisions, how they interact with people. But if you have sex before you're married, you're introducing into the relationship an aspect of that has expectations that are associated with marriage, but your relationship is not marriage, and you're going to think differently about that than the guy does. Because
the relation becomes sexual.
Yeah, and
there's
women,
nothing based off
women right away then think you're mine, right? And this is
This is uniting us.
Yeah.
Bonding us.
And this is love. And you have expectations that he's going to be like a husband to me now. He's going to be loyal to me now. He's going to be spending his time with me now. And to a guy, it's just sex.
Right.
At that age,
At
it's
that
just
age.
sex. And women don't get that.
Yeah. And
So you're introducing a dynamic into a relationship that doesn't belong there, because you're going to have expectations that and it could happen either way, but someone is going to have an expectation of the other person as though you're married, and the person is not going to live up to those expectations.
Right.
And you're going to try to force that issue. And what some young women do is, when they have sex with a young man before they get married and they find that hasn't worked to make them act like a husband, then they will accidentally, with quotes, putting air quotes around that, get pregnant and force the man to be a husband.
Yeah, and it doesn't force them, does it?
Well,
Statistics, it doesn't
no,
seem like
it
that.
may force him to sign the papers and be a husband, but
and to get out of there as quick as he can.
But yeah, it may chase him away.
Yeah.
But if it does get him to actually marry you, you might be marrying like the totally wrong guy, and the only reason he's marrying you is because you've forced a situation, and there's going to be something between you for the whole length of your marriage, and you'll never know if the guy loves you or not, because you never know if he would have married you if he didn't have to.
Not, yeah, which is sad.
So
I wouldn't want to be in something like that.
You set yourself up for all kinds of failure. But these are the kinds of things that an 18-year-old mind does, because it's not fully developed.
They play tricks.
Yeah, it's not fully developed. It's not thinking about moral consequences and about long-term outcomes, and it's thinking about what do I want now and how do I get it now.
Right.
And so that's why age matters, and in length of time of dating is the length of time it takes to find out the things that you need to know. And the fact that you love the guy or think you love the guy is not the thing you need to know.
Right, it's not enough.
It's not enough.
Yeah.
You need to know if this is someone you're going to stay in love with and fall more in love with, and not less in love with.
Based on being in those different situations, like you're saying.
Because the love that I had for my wife at age 25 when I married her is a fraction. It's a small fraction of the love I have for her now. But it could be the other way around.
It could have been the other way around.
So I had to know the things I needed to know about her to know that this is a person who I could be more in love with and not less.
If you spend more time with,
Yeah. And if you start to hang around with, if you date someone and you see that this is actually not, well, I love them because they're hot, but I really don't like this about them and I really don't like that about them, but maybe that'll change.
Oh gosh, get out as fast as you can. Really, don't even waste your time for a minute. That's telling you this is a person you're going to be less in love with down the road, not more in love with. Because what you see with the magnifying glass just gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another question. We're engaged and I didn't want to marry him, but how now? Let's see. What should I do? Okay, so they want to get out. They want to get out of it. They want to get out of it. They're engaged. How do they get out of it?
Give the ring back.
Okay, and don't even hesitate. Oh gosh, I can't even believe.
If you feel that you may love the person and you may want to marry them at some point, but you just realize that you said yes too quickly, but you still want to have a relationship, give the ring back and say, I want you to hold on to this and give it to me at the right time. I want you to ask me again.
Yeah, ask me again when we've dated a little bit more.
And they'll say, well, how will I know the right time? And you just say, well, you'll know. You'll know. Yeah,
good. That's good.
And the guy might walk away and you take a chance. But, I mean, if that happens, then that's not a guy you want to be married to anyways, right?
Right. Here's another question. Can you be attracted to other people when you're engaged? Will that ever stop? Okay, let's talk about this one. Can you be attracted to other people while you're engaged? I mean, you can, obviously. And people are, right?
Yeah. And you're attracted to other people when you're married.
Right, that's true.
And you're attracted to other people when you're married for 40 years.
Yep.
And it's what you do about that attraction. And it's what you see the person you're engaged to or dating, whatever. It's how you see them, what they do about it. And this is part of dating. Is you find out, when I'm sitting at dinner with this person, are my eyes always wandering? Is there always somebody that looks more interesting?
Yeah, that's a red flag.
Well, that tells you that you don't want to be engaged to that person.
That's right. They're boring. They you just
are their eyes always wandering? Is there?
That's right.
Like, are they disconnected from you? You know. And this is also something to do with age. I was just going to say, there's this thing that women do in the movies where they say, my eyes are here, I'm up here, look up here. If you find yourself sitting across the table and
looking,
he's always looking there, right?
Yeah.
So, this is what happens when you're 18. This is what's on the guy's mind. He's trying to figure out how to get you into bed. And if it takes marriage, then he may just go that far. Because he can always get a divorce. Because
divorce is
we know
easy.
that. Everybody knows that.
Yeah. Instant marriage, instant divorce, instant coffee.
And he could, exactly. And he could even do that just through the engagement. Once you're engaged, he could feel entitled and make you feel responsible. And he could get you into bed through the engagement and then not have to follow through and marry you.
Right.
He could take the ring back,
Yeah, that's right.
And so you wanna be watching where are his eyes? Not only are they wandering around, but are they focused on you, or are they focused on the outer you? Is he just staring at your body? At your body,
But hormones rage at this point.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. How do you figure that out with an 18-year-old?
Yeah.
So if you're dating an 18-year-old, you need to date him for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Until he's 23 or 24, and But then that's a problem because if you date for a long time, you're more likely to mess up and have sex. And
that's true. And you will probably. It's hard to stay.
So I would. So the message here then is, don't date anybody seriously when you're 18. Date in groups.
Just have fun.
Date different people. You don't have to be somebody's girlfriend. You don't have to have a boyfriend. You don't have to have a missionary that you're writing to.
Yeah, because I think a big problem is that, and it could be cultural within the LDS community, is that we try to pair ourselves off so quickly that sometimes we don't really get to know who we are. You're not comfortable with yourself. You're not happy being alone. If you can be happy, when the time comes when you can be happy alone, happy and content in who you are, that's the time you're ready to go seek another, because you're whole.
Yeah, so that's why
I think that's what these girls don't understand. They want to seek some companionship immediately when they're don't even understand themselves.
Yeah.
And so
so that's why I say that the first way out of your parents' home should not be marriage. You should go get an apartment, live on your own, know what it's like to live on your own, be independent, and then you bring something to a marriage. And you don't go from mom and dad taking care of you to some guy taking care of you. You take care of yourself.
You want to take care of yourself first.
And then you understand what you have and what you bring to the marriage, and then you bring it. And that takes some time. That takes from the time you're 18 until you're 22 or 23, 3 or 4 years out of the house, living on your own, paying your own bills.
Yeah, having some independence. And getting to know who you are.
Yeah.
Not so much how you, because I think, especially when you've been, you become one in many ways, but you got to be able to stand on your own. You just have to.
Yeah, you have to know what you're bringing to the
table.
Marriage.
Yeah, to the marriage.
What you're bringing to the table.
And because you want to be whole, because you don't want to impede the other person and your relationship, because you're not whole.
Yeah,
because if you have all these missing holes or these things that you still have to work on because you're younger or inexperienced or whatever it is, you're affecting another person's life.
Yeah,
and so you have to look at it that way as well.
If you're not bringing positive things into the marriage, if you're not bringing your abilities, your learning, your experience, your independence, if you're not bringing that into a marriage, then you're going to feel for the length of that marriage that you're inferior.
Right.
And you're going to feel like you have to give in, that you're always the one that has to give in, that he's always got to be right, even when he's not.
You have no legs to stand on.
You have to be the peacemaker. You have to be the one that always says, I'm sorry. You have to be, and that's setting yourself up not only to have to do that, but that's setting yourself up to making a guy who thinks he's always right and everybody always has to do what I say, and that guy is going to be a guy who then is going to be able to act on any desire that he wants,
right,
and get away with it. And the chances are, because the question before was, can you still be attracted to other people when you're engaged? You're still attracted to other people when you're married. And
Right.
if you know that all you have to do with your wife is
Manipulate.
push her buttons, right? Then you can go and act on those desires and have sex with other women, and your wife's not going to do anything about it because it's always her fault, you know. And you're going to make her feel that it was her fault. You didn't do enough for me. And you'll be manipulated into just being a doormat.
So here's some comments here in the chat room. Greta Garbo once said, "We are not meant to be perfect. We are meant to be whole." And someone says, "I strongly disagree. That's incorrect. Stereotyping." Another one says in the chat room here, 18-year-old men can have clean minds just easily as you can. Well, good. Do you believe that? I think they can. I'm probably, if they really have got their eye on some other ball, other than, but, men are everybody's, you got hormones raging, so. I don't know. I disagree. I think that men and women, we're constantly thinking about, the opposite sex, and some people the same sex, obviously.
Yeah.
But in how to unite and to be physical.
There's a difference. There are differences between having a clean mind and then what you do about it. And 18-year-old men are not capable of making wise decisions as well as someone who is older. So they're not capable.
Responsible decisions, perhaps?
Yeah, moral decisions or wise decisions. So they're not capable of always. You can't count on them to always do the right thing. That's one thing I would say.
They may have the
but
desire.
the other thing I would say is that I disagree that 18-year-old men are not able to have as clean a mind. That's something you learn, how to control your thoughts, and you learn how, because the adversary, your thoughts are not your own. You have thoughts, and God or the Holy Ghost puts thoughts in your head that are not your own, and the adversary puts thoughts in your head that are not your own. So you got three sets of thoughts in your head.
Competing thoughts.
Yeah, and you've got to decide which thoughts you're going to entertain and which thoughts you're going to chase out. And an 18-year-old is not as experienced to know which are his own and which are not, and which thoughts to chase out, and which to entertain and which not to entertain. It just doesn't have that life experience. Doesn't have the experience of costs and benefits. Doesn't have the experience to recognize which thoughts are mine and which aren't. I know this as a bishop because I know I had young men that were 18, 19, 22, 24 coming in and confessing to me all these terrible thoughts, and so they must be a terrible person. And I'm asking, well, what'd you do with those thoughts? Well, I chased them out of my head. Well, then whose thoughts were they? Well, they're mine. Well, really? You thought that up, or how did that come into your head? Well, it just popped in my head. And what'd you do with it? I chased it away. So don't you think that that's the adversary putting a thought in your head, and then you chase it away? Oh gosh. Oh yeah, you mean all my thoughts aren't my own? And it's like, I mean, I know we grow up hearing this, but you wouldn't believe what guys don't get until they're older.
Really?
Like they hear it over and over in priesthood meeting or in primary and Sunday school, but they don't get it till they're much older. That oh, you mean those aren't my thoughts and I'm not responsible for those? It's like, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, it's what you do with them. You're right.
What you do with
it's
them.
what you do.
And the thing is that an 18-year-old is much more likely to entertain those thoughts. And not only because of lack of experience, but also hormonally. And I don't want to be rude.
No, but be rude. Go ahead.
But starting at 13 or 14 or 15, young men have a really tough time riding home on a school bus or on a bus with girls, and they've got to put their books on their laps, or
really?
Men do not have control of their bodies.
Yeah, so it's bodily functions
There's
that are
just
out of
stuff
when you're
that happens that you
it's
don't.
hormonal and adolescent and
guys know what I'm talking about,
right?
And
girls are all, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And girls don't know that.
Well, and
this
girls
is why they should know that.
And when girls go around dressed a certain way, I don't want to blame girls for the way they dress, but when girls dress a certain way, then a guy's going to have a certain reaction, and that shouldn't surprise you.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that it's your fault what the guy does or how he behaves, but it shouldn't surprise you.
Right.
If you dress provocatively the guy's going to be provoked.
Right. You're not asking for it, but you're asking for somebody to look at you.
Yeah.
In many ways.
And they're going to look. And an 18-year-old guy is going to look a lot longer than well,
an older gentleman that just perhaps
than a person who's in control of themselves, and that's got to be somebody that's older.
And control comes with time.
There's a lot of 40-year-olds who aren't in control of themselves. That's what I said before.
Yeah.
A lot of guys never grow up.
Right.
And so you've got to find. I'm mostly talking to women here. It sounds like, right?
I think so.
But you've got to find a guy that's going to grow up, and so you've got to find how they act in all these different situations. Are they just big boys? If they are, they're probably going to be like that when they're 40, just a big boy, big goofy man, acting like a boy. And that's somebody who's going to follow their appetites and their passions. And I mean, there's a lot of adultery, there's a lot of cheating, and it's just a fact. And why does that happen? It doesn't happen because you're a bad person and you let your husband down, or I mean, it happens because there's a lot of guys that are just morally irresponsible. Nobody's ever called them to account, and the world is more accepting of it. And you have to be much more discerning in who you commit yourself to.
Right. So true. Yeah.
And I can't say it enough. For a lot of the time, for a long time. So both in terms of age and in terms of the percentage of the time, even into marriage, guys, sex is sex, and that's something different than love. Now, and so that could even be someone who's been married for 40 years can be just having sex with their wife just to have sex, and there are other times when they're making love. There's a difference.
There's a difference, and people need to know that as well.
Yeah.
Making love is different than having sex.
You can be married for 30 or 40 years and have a man that sometimes makes love and sometimes it's just sex. And for women, they want it always to be love, or they expect it always to be love, and they're disappointed. And if that's the case after 30 years or 40 years of marriage with a good and loyal man, what do you think's going on in the mind of an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old who's dating you and is just staring at your body all the time, but is also looking around at other girls? And I mean, like, sex is a huge part of life. It's a driving force that can overpower your decisions, your moral decisions, and especially when you're younger, you make bad decisions. You give in. You're not in control of yourself, and it's not up to the woman to control the man, but it is your responsibility for yourself to recognize this guy's an animal, and you know, I'm walking, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if things become clear, and you can't think this will change, or he'll grow up, or you know.
Because okay, let's see.
I don't know. Maybe I sound like I'm hard on men.
But. No. Let's see. Wouldn't it actually be more beneficial being married at a young age? Someone married at 18 compared to 25 will be a great deal more mature than the other when they are both 30. That's one comment. Okay, here's another one. Do you want what? Let's see. Do what you want. It's your life. Is what we hear from all the time from the media and famous people. Well, there's
and how many of them are divorced, and how many of them have messed up marriages, and you know,
right, and there's maybe two sides to that. You know, yes, because I had a friend who she got divorced after being married like 7 or 8 years, and then she was separated from her husband for 16 years, and they just remarried. And unlucky for her that, you know, whatever, they came back together. Maybe lucky, unlucky, I think it's lucky. And I forgot where I'm going with this. Oh, gosh. Okay, anyhow, so I guess I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, let me say something about this. Okay. So you're an 18-year-old girl, you got a 20-year-old guy, he didn't go on a mission, you're both inactive from church, you don't really care about church, you're in love with each other, you don't really care about each other's families, you don't care about anybody but each other, you just want to be together all the time. So you get married. So you can have sex and live together and be happy ever after.
When you say that, I think it's the primary reason would be the sex.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the woman wants to turn the relationship into a full, loving relationship, and the guy wants sex, and he says I love you, and you hear that, and
then you're off to bed.
So you get married, and so things are fine for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and then you have a child. Let's say you wait 3 or 4 years and you have a baby, and then a couple years later you have another baby, and then you're approaching 30, and he's about approaching 30, and your kids are getting to be about primary age, and you start thinking, maybe I'd like to go back to church.
And here you go, huh?
You know,
the divide.
So I'm going to start going to church with these kids so they can go to primary. And you get your husband, you know, so come to church. So I'm not going to church. Like, you know,
I'm going out with the boys on Sunday.
You knew that when you married me. I'm not, you know. And so things change, right? You grow up, or let's just say you it's got nothing to do with church. Let's just say you go back to school and you learn things and you become intellectual and you realize, holy cow, I got a brain in my head that I didn't realize I had. You know, I was partying and having fun, and now I've straightened out a little bit because I have to be responsible for my kids, and now I'm learning that I read books and I understand them and I think and I have great thoughts, and I want to talk with my husband about them, and he looks at me like, and he says, what? You know, I mean, there's a marriage that's growing apart, right?
Right.
He's not reading books. He's not getting intellectual. He's not. He's watching football and drinking beer on Sunday and Saturday watching college ball, and during the week he's having a beer and watching basketball. A couple of beers,
yeah.
Or whatever he's doing, but he's out playing ball or whatever. But you grow apart. Your interests grow apart. You can't talk to your husband anymore. So then what do? You find people you can talk to, and so you end up talking. You find girls that other women, other young women that read and that you can talk to, and that's interesting for only so long. And then you find a young man who catches your eye, and he can talk with you, and you know, and then you realize, gee, even if you don't cheat, you just realize, gee, I should have married somebody like him. Or I should have married somebody else. I wish.
Now that's tragic. What do you do with that?
Well, that's tough, you know. Like, do you hang
because
on
because it's truth. You know, it's truth and it's before you. And I think it's the realization, and the truth is hard to see, but when it hits you, it hits you, and there's nothing you can do to change that because the truth is almost you're aware now. You're awake.
Yeah. With
the truth.
Yeah. So what you do is you wait until you're grown up a little more, and he's grown up a little more, and you can see what you're getting. And you can see who
before
you are.
You get married.
Before you get married.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Because you don't want, we're trying to offset the problem.
Yeah.
The problem and it's a painful problem.
How can you think you're ready to get married out of your parents' house if you've never paid a bill, you've never had an apartment, you've never had a full-time job, you've never been responsible for anything that you may have done them, but you could quit at any time because you're in your parents' house, right? But once you're out of your parents' house and on your own, you can't quit. You can't walk away.
You can't walk away. You got to eat. You got to feed yourself. You got to pay the bill.
So that's like a marriage. You can't just quit and walk away. So learn to do that with an apartment first, and with a cat and
a dog,
and some plants,
an animal.
and see if a guy can do that with an animal or with a plant or you know. I mean, these things that show up in movies show up for reasons. That you see that the guy has a living creature with him and he takes care of it. That tells you something. I mean, that's in the movie for a reason, because I know it's cliche, but it's cliche because it's true.
Right.
It's a signal. So you look for signals.
Look for metaphors.
And that takes time. And
you know, it's interesting too, because one of the comments here says that, especially in our culture now, I think we are losing self-control because we are encouraged not to have self-control. I disagree with that. I think, yes, it is true. The truth of that is that, yes, we're encouraged to have no self-control, but you can still have self-control.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if I'm shown whatever it is I'm shown. I still have the right and the agency and the wherewithal.
Well, yes and no.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes and no. You have the potential for self-control. The problem is that people aren't teaching it to you. So I mean, if you're growing up actively in a religious tradition, whatever it may be, people are probably showing you or teaching you how to have self-control. But if you're not, the world around you is not showing you models of self-control. They're showing you the opposite. So yes, it's possible to have self-control, but somebody has to teach that to you, or has to be a model for you for that. Otherwise, you don't really even realize you should have self-control.
Well, I think I think of it in this way as well. Say, for instance, someone who's been molested when they were little. Okay, do they repeat the same thing because that's what they were taught, or do they stop because they know that's wrong? And maybe this is completely different, but do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but
they still have the choice.
That's a hard thing.
I know it's
because they don't have as much choice as you think they have, because the damage done. Abuse is a really
that's a whole different subject. Yeah, I know, it is.
But abuse is really complex, And,
That's true.
And it brings out reactions later in life that that you don't really have full control over unless you come to understand them and are prepared for that.
Okay.
So if you've been abused and you get counseling and help as you're growing up, and then you're prepared.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've been abused and you keep it secret and you grow up and nobody's ever helped you and you've never talked about it, then that can come out in all kinds of pathological ways, not necessarily sexual, come out all kinds of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I had people that were kleptomaniacs. And the origin of that was that they were
molested or something
as a young girl, you know, and it comes out in all kinds of ways, and you don't really have control over that. You have a certain degree over your choice of the moment, but you have drives in you to get out of you the feelings that were put in you of worthlessness and of guilt.
That's true. Maybe that's not a good analogy.
So that's a really complex issue.
But we still have choices, I guess, in life.
Yeah.
We still have. I have a choice whether I'm going to steal that or not. Or I have a choice. You know.
We do, but it's
more
a harder
complicated.
choice.
Yeah.
It's like if you're an alcoholic, you have a choice, but it's really hard because you're already an alcoholic.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make that choice.
That's true.
So you need a lot of help. Mm-hmm. And sexual abuse and sex generally people don't talk about, so it's kept secret. So you don't have that kind of help.
Yeah.
And so for the most part, you don't have that kind of.
So you're drowning within yourself.
Agency that you would have in other things. You know?
Okay.
It's really difficult.
Yeah.
One thing I would say is it's not talked about enough and explained enough. I sat in so many young men, young women's meetings, joint meetings, where I heard leaders say to my kids, my daughter and my sons, don't have sex, don't date till you're 16, group date, lay out all those rules and never explain why. And all it was don't, and then they would hold up a couple that were married happily and say, and see, then you'll be happily married like this couple. Don't they look happy? And all my kids got out of that was a whole bunch of don't and no understanding of why.
Of whys. Mm-hmm.
And then when I was a bishop, I would have young men come in after their missions and confess some relatively minor indiscretion that didn't really have to be confessed to a bishop, but I didn't want to tell them that because I didn't want to make them feel awkward, so I'd listen to them, and then I'd try to counsel them. And what I would do is ask, well, so why is that wrong? And they would say, well, it's against the commandments. Why is that against the commandments? Because God doesn't like it. Why doesn't God like it? Because it's wrong. Why is it wrong? Because it's against the commandments. They had no idea why it was wrong. Mm-hmm. Because nobody ever taught them. All they ever said was don't, and your body's saying do.
Right. So we need some clarification.
Yeah.
For young adults.
So we need to understand why chastity is so important to God. If you're an LDS person, you need to understand why it's so offensive to God when we break the law of chastity. And my short form answer for that would be to say that every other part of our life, right, is something that well, let me start over. The power of procreation is the power of godliness, and God is sharing with us the essence of godliness, the essence of what He is. Mm-hmm. He's sharing that with us, and when we abuse that, what we're doing is it's like we're spitting in His face. It's like we're trampling. He takes it personally. If it's a personal insult because we're taking what is most Him, His greatest attribute, and our Mother in Heaven's greatest attribute, power of procreation, the very essence of godliness that they're sharing with us for a time now. We're taking that and treating it as if it's nothing. And so we're offending them personally. We're treating the very essence of them as though it's nothing, as though it's the same as if I just had a smoke. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that having a drink or a smoke or other weaknesses of the flesh or stealing something or whatever, those are things that are not right, and they're not right for reasons, and that we can find forgiveness for them much easier than if we misbehave sexually, because when we misbehave sexually, we're personally affronting God's essence, is the being of godliness. It's a personal insult.
And some people might say, why is that drive so strong when it's so wrong at the same? You know what I mean?
Because it's so right when it's in the right place. Because it's the essence of godliness. It's the highest. It's the best, fullest expression of love that we can have if God is love, then this is part of it, and this is the fullest expression of union and love and togetherness and commitment and joy and experience that we can have together with another person, and then we take it and treat it as though it's like I'm going to a ball game. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. And then again, it just becomes an act. It's like you said, the sex or the making love.
Yeah.
And it just becomes an act, like an animal. Any animal can do that.
If we treat it cheaply, if my son took my name and trampled all over my name, I would be very angry. If my son goes off and has a smoke, I'm not going to be so angry. I'm not going to be all, it's the end of the world. If my son goes to parties and drinks for a few years, or if my son quits going to church for a while, or whatever, there's all kinds of things that I could take and deal with and see in the future how things might work out. But if my son walks around dishonoring my name and basically not caring what that looks like, and not caring that he's insulting me, that hurts. That hurts me personally. Yeah, it offends me personally, and that's hard for me to forgive. It's hard for me to. I can, but it's hard for me to get over that. And I think that's the same thing with sexuality and God. That we're taking the very essence of Him that He's sharing with us, and we're mistreating it and abusing it, and we're personally offending Him. He takes it personally,
right? And
he has a hard time forgiving that because it hurts.
And here's another question here. Another comment. At any age, you can't expect to marry that perfect person, but you can't marry a project either. You just have to love, and that's very important. You just have to love. You just have to love who they are, and know what you're going to grow and to learn together over time. Hopefully you do, but some people, that growing together is key to keeping you together. Yeah. Because if you do not grow together, you are either growing together or you're growing apart. There's no stagnation.
But you need to see the potential for that before you get married, not afterwards.
Right.
You need to see the potential for that, and not get married to somebody who's got a hot body and really makes you feel great and you're really turned on by, and then hope that there's the potential for that later.
Right. And I like the platonic love that we've talked about in the past. It's the friendship. It's that deep connection. It's the love. It's almost the spirit-to-spirit communication. And then what follows after that is the physical, because that just really completes it.
Yeah. Yeah. There are just ways to tell. Sometimes more quickly than others. So I'm not saying you have to date somebody for 20 years and know them inside out, but within a few months, there are ways to tell. Moments of crisis reveal a lot. How people act and interact with your parents and your family reveal a lot. The pressure for sex reveals a lot. So I hope I'm not being too personal here, but when my daughter first started dating the man that she married, he said to her within the first week, I want to clarify something, that I want to take sex off the table and not even go there, because I like you too much to do that and mess that up with you. Well, that tells her something, right. And that tells me something,
that's right.
When I find that out through her later, and there's a young man who takes serious things seriously.
There's a lot of respect there. He has respect for her. He wants her for her. And then the bonus would be the other.
Yeah. And he comes over to go to church with us, and instead of her jumping in his car and they go off to church, he jumps in our car and goes with the family.
Good.
As a family. Well, that tells me something.
That tells you
about
something
them.
there, right there. Yeah. Yeah. So your daughter's a lucky girl.
And they came and sat with us as a family instead of sitting in some other corner.
Yeah.
And, there's lots of ways to tell. There's lots of things that you can see, and those are big tell signs that he was giving, right? He's an honorable man and a good man, and that was obvious right away. Sometimes it takes a little longer, but within 6 months, if someone's got potential or not.
Yeah. Yeah, because some of these girls, they date.
But again, at 18, what you see in 6 months is not going to tell you what that person's going to be like at 25.
I would just tell every girl that's just wait.
Yeah.
I hate to even say
fun,
that the number. Get to know who you are.
Yeah. Enjoy more people, enjoy more life, become independent first.
Yeah.
And then you bring something to a marriage, and then you'll always feel equal in that marriage. You'll always feel like a contributor to that marriage. You'll never be put on the spot where you have to be the one that gives in or
inferior.
Yeah,
It's a lot,
exactly.
it's a lot of
Exactly.
inferior. There's a lot of mind game.
Go get yourself grown up
playing.
first, and then bring your grown up self to the marriage, and
Because you have something to offer
you
at
have
that
much
point.
more chance for success, and you'll make a much wiser decision about who and when you marry.
Yeah, perfect. And folks, thank you so much for joining us. You've been listening to the Single Marriage Show on web only, and co-hosted every Tuesday and Thursday with Dr. Brent Gilchrist, who has a ton of knowledge. So you have to listen. You have to do what we say. And again, join us again tomorrow for the Monica Barber Hour, followed by that by the Single Marriage Program. And thank you so much. And you have a question, don't feel free to chat in. Have a great day.